Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
The answer is yes. No, excuse me. No.
For anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking
yes or
for the
no.
World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that said Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
This is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden.
What started as a routine hearing quickly turned into a fiery confrontation after Representative Madeleine Dean challenged Attorney General Pam Bondi over Trump's January 6 pardons, her past Qatar lobbying work, and questions surrounding a controversial luxury jet. And once Bondi refused to answer directly, the exchange became personal, tense, and impossible to ignore.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, and welcome, Attorney General Bondi. I just wonder, sincerely wonder, do you hear how hollow your last words sound in light of the pardon of all of the January 6th people, day one of this administration? I believe you're sincere. You want to protect law enforcement, but your principal, the president, pardoned every single one on January 6th. It rings hollow when you say these words, that if you spit on a police officer, we're going to go after you. Talk to my friends who are Capitol Police officers who were here, 5 of whom are no longer here. They are dead. And this administration, and I guess I want to ask you, did you have any advice for the president when he came forward with the blanket pardon on January 20th? What advice did you offer the president?
I am never going to talk about conversations, advice in any way.
Were you asked
I'm
for
never
advice?
going to talk about discussions I've had or have not had.
You'll remember.
I can answer with the President of the United
Yes or no?
States.
Did you give him any advice? Yes or no?
I am not going to discuss any conversations
That's a no.
I have had with it.
And
you just put
your
words in
own
my
word,
mouth. I am not going to
No,
discuss.
I'm going to reveal your own words.
I am
Just a
not
moment.
going to
Please stop.
discuss
Please stop. This
conversations
is my
that
time.
I've had with the President of the United States.
Attorney
You asked
General,
me a question.
I would like to reclaim
and
the
you
last
asked
20
me to
seconds.
answer.
I have asked to reclaim my time. Please put 20 seconds back on the clock.
You have an extra 30.
If the general,
She answered and then answered it again and answered it again with a non-answer. I ask for your consideration
if the
of putting time
gentlelady
on.
will let the witness answer the questions, we will.
She answered it by saying no. Okay. The 3 hallmarks of this administration are incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. I'm going to focus today on corruption. And in my mind, there are 2 types of corruption: personal, and then the other I'm going to call public, governmental. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
The answer is yes. No, excuse me. No.
For anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking
yes or
for the
no.
World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that said Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
This is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden? Very strange and very unprofessional of you. The answer is yes or no, and the answer is yes. You were registered as a lobbyist for Qatar. Is that correct? Yes. Never mind. Don't answer. Did you disclose that when you went before for the Senate for confirmation? Yes or no? No, it was not in your documents. The answer is no. President Trump.
This was discussed at my confirmation hearings in detail.
It was discussed, but you failed to bring up the conflict that you had. President Trump recently announced he'd accept that $400 million Qatar airplane because it was just prettier than the one he was flying around in. Is it true that you gave advice that this was legally permissible? Yes or no?
I will not discuss any advice that my Office of Legal Counsel gives to the President of the United States on any matter.
Executive privilege.
When you spoke before the Senate, you said you would ask for ethical advice. Did you recuse yourself from that issue?
And talking about unprofessional, you say the President wanted a jet because it's pretty?
Excuse
Come
me.
on, this is a Senate, this is a
He said it
congressional
himself.
hearing.
He said it himself.
Representative Madeleine Dean opened the exchange by questioning whether Bondi's strong words about protecting law enforcement rang hollow in light of President Trump's blanket pardons for January 6 defendants. Dean's argument was direct: if the administration claims it will aggressively protect police officers, then how does that square with pardoning people connected to the attack on the Capitol? She pressed Bondi on whether she advised the president before those pardons were issued. Bondi refused to discuss any conversations she may or may not have had with President Trump, repeatedly saying she would not reveal private discussions with the president. That refusal immediately raised the temperature in the room. Dean tried to reclaim her time, arguing that Bondi had given a non-answer. But the back and forth quickly became tense as the committee chairman allowed Bondi to continue responding. And this is where the hearing shifted from policy disagreement into a broader accusation of corruption. Dean accused the administration of being defined by what she called incompetence, corruption, and cruelty, then said she wanted to focus specifically on corruption. She then turned to Bondi's past work involving Qatar and asked whether Bondi had ever registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Bondi responded by referencing her work related to anti-human trafficking efforts connected to the World Cup, but Dean kept pressing for a simple yes or no answer. The exchange became personal when Bondi fired back at Dean over previous comments about Joe Biden's competence, accusing Dean of having to retract her own words. Dean immediately objected, calling Bondi's response discourteous, unprofessional, and outside the normal boundaries of a congressional hearing. That moment mattered because it showed how quickly Bondi moved away from answering the question and instead attacked the questioner. Dean then pressed further, asking whether Bondi disclosed her foreign agent registration during her Senate confirmation process. Bondi said the issue had been discussed during confirmation, but Dean argued Bondi failed to properly raise the conflict. From there, Dean connected the Qatar issue to President Trump's reported acceptance of a $400 million luxury aircraft from Qatar, asking whether Bondi had given legal advice that the arrangement was permissible. Bondi again refused to discuss legal advice provided by the Office of Legal Counsel to the President. That refusal became the central theme of the exchange. Dean's questions were aimed at transparency: what did Bondi disclose, what advice did she give, and whether she recused herself from issues involving Qatar. Bondi's answers repeatedly relied on confidentiality, privilege, or direct pushback against Dean's framing. And politically, that is exactly why this exchange stood out. Dean was trying to paint a picture of an attorney general too closely tied to the president's personal and political interests, while Bondi tried to frame the questioning as disrespectful and politically motivated. The hearing became less about one single answer and more about whether the public can trust the Justice Department to act independently when the questions involve Trump, foreign influence, and personal benefit. By the end of the exchange, one thing was clear. This was not just a disagreement over legal technicalities. It was a public fight over accountability, ethics, and whether the nation's top law enforcement official is willing to answer direct questions when the subject involves the president. Subscribe to Capitol Breakdown HQ for more congressional hearing breakdowns and political analysis.